I was 19 when I moved into my first apartment, a small but cozy one-bedroom place on Sycamore Street. It wasn't the nicest building, but it was cheap, and I was excited to have my own space. The previous tenant had moved out under mysterious circumstances, but I didn't think much of it. That changed quickly. The first week was fine, uneventful. But by the second week, I started waking up in the middle of the night to faint whispers. I assumed it was the neighbors at first, but the walls were thick, and the voices sounded like they were coming from inside my room. I'd turn on the lights, and the whispers would stop. One night, I woke up at exactly 3:07 a.m. to the sound of my closet door creaking open. My heart pounded as I reached for my phone, but when I turned on the flashlight, the door was shut. I told myself I must have imagined it and forced myself back to sleep. Then things escalated. The next night, I woke up again, but this time I saw something, a figure, a tall, shadowy presence standing in the corner of my room. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It just stood there, watching. And then it stepped forward. I don't remember anything after that. When I woke up the next morning, my closet door was wide open, and all the clothes had been ripped from their hangers. One night, I set up my phone to record. I wanted proof, or at least some reassurance that I was imagining things. When I checked the footage the next morning, my stomach dropped. The closet door had opened on its own slowly, as if someone was inside pushing it. And then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the video cut to static. The following night, I decided to stay at a friend's house. I told him everything, and he agreed to come back with me the next day to check things out. We arrived in the afternoon, and as soon as I stepped inside, I felt a chill run down my spine. Everything was exactly how I left it, except for one thing. My bedroom mirror had been shattered, and on the floor, written in the dust, were the words, "You saw me." I moved out that weekend. I never found out what happened to the last tenant, and I don't think I want to know. I was 16 the last time I went trick-or-treating. My friends and I thought it would be funny to do one last run through the neighborhood, but we didn't expect the night to end the way it did. It was a small town, and everyone knew everyone. We hit the usual houses, but as the night went on, we noticed a house that had never been decorated before. A big Victorian home at the end of the street. It was covered in fake cobwebs, orange lights flickering in the windows, and a single jack-o'-lantern sitting on the porch. The door was wide open. At first, we assumed it was some kind of haunted house attraction, so we stepped inside. The air was thick and musty. No furniture, no decorations inside. Just an empty house with a single hallway leading to the back. We called out, but no one answered. Then, we heard the door slam shut behind us. The house was silent. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the second floor. We ran, but the door wouldn't budge. The footsteps grew faster, louder. We sprinted toward the back of the house, hoping to find another way out, but all the doors were locked. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move. Not a normal shadow. It was shifting, growing taller, stretching toward us. It was at that moment we heard a voice. "Happy Halloween." The next thing I remember, I was outside, gasping for breath, my friends beside me. The house, gone. Just an empty lot where it had stood moments before. Later that night, we tried searching online for the house, but we found nothing. No records, no old photos, not even an address. It was like it had never existed. We asked around, but the older folks in town only shook their heads, telling us we shouldn't have gone there. We never spoke about it again. But every Halloween, we avoid that street, just in case. It was a rainy October night, and I was driving home from my shift at the diner. I took the back roads to avoid traffic, my headlights barely cutting through the heavy mist. That's when I saw her, a woman standing on the side of the road in a white dress, drenched from the rain. She was barefoot, her dark hair matted to her face. She looked lost. I hesitated, but pulled over. "Do you need a ride?" I asked. She didn't say anything, just nodded and got into the back seat. Her presence sent a chill down my spine, but I told myself I was just tired. "Where are you headed?" I asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "He's coming." I felt my blood run cold. "Who?" I asked, gripping the wheel tighter. Silence. I turned my head for just a second and she was gone, vanished into thin air. My car was still moving, the doors never opened, but the seat was empty. And then the radio crackled on. A voice, distorted and broken, whispered, "You should have kept driving." I sped all the way home that night and locked every door and window. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from my car to my front door. A week later, I was driving home late again when I saw something that made my stomach drop. The same woman, standing in the same spot. This time, she was smiling. I floored it, speeding past her, refusing to look back. But my rearview mirror caught something that still haunts me. She wasn't standing there anymore. She was in my back seat, grinning, her eyes locked onto mine. I slammed on the brakes, spinning out onto the side of the road. When I turned, she was gone again. But in my rearview mirror, written in the fog on the glass, were 2 words. "See you." I don't drive that road anymore. And I don't stop for strangers. Living in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Halloween had always been my favorite time of the year, and this year I was determined to make it special. It was a crisp, chilly evening, and the streets were alive with the sound of kids running door to door in search of candy. I had just returned home from the local costume store, eager to hand out candy to the trick-or-treaters. Around 9 p.m., I noticed the last a few kids heading down the street. The porch light flickered as I settled into my chair, candy bowl in hand, waiting for the final visitors. The night had been uneventful, with only a few groups of kids coming by, most of them already too old for trick-or-treating, but eager for sweets nonetheless. Then I saw him, a child no older than 6 or 7 standing at the edge of my driveway. He was dressed in a torn, dirty clown costume, his face pale beneath the makeup, eyes sunken and hollow. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. What struck me as odd was that he wasn't with any other kids. Most children were accompanied by a parent, but this boy stood alone, staring at me from the darkness. I smiled at him, figuring he had lost track of his group, and called out, "Hey, little guy, are you looking for candy?" The boy didn't respond. He just stood there, motionless, watching me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, but I chalked it up to the chill in the air. I stood up, grabbed a piece of candy, and walked toward him. As I got closer, I saw that his costume was covered in what looked like grime, and the makeup on his face was smeared in a way that seemed unnatural. "Here you go," I said, holding out the candy. He still didn't speak. His eyes, though wide, seemed empty, void of any emotion. I reached out my hand, but he took a step back, shaking his head slowly. At that moment, I noticed something strange. His reflection. There was none. I blinked and looked at him again, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. The streetlight above me buzzed, casting a dim glow. And then I heard a voice, a whisper, almost like a breath coming from behind me. He's not real. I spun around, but no one was there. When I turned back to the boy, he was gone. Just like that. Vanished. I stood there, my heart racing, trying to process what I had just experienced. I ran inside, locked all the doors, and checked the windows. It wasn't until much later that night, after hearing that same whispering voice again in the darkness, that I realized the truth. That child had never been Rel. The next morning, I asked around the neighborhood if anyone had seen a child in a clown costume. No one had. No one even remembered seeing him that night. I've never been able to shake the image of that pale, lifeless child standing on my driveway, waiting for something. And every Halloween since then, I make sure all the lights are off before it gets dark. Just in case he comes back.